This episode of Heed the Call with Dan Hanzus and Marc Sessler is brought to you by BetterHelp. Heed the Call with Dan Hanzus and Marc Sessler is on Underdog, so why not start playing on Underdog today? It's easy. You're not playing against experts who spend all their time researching, nerds. It's just you against the projections. Simply choose higher or lower, and you could win up to 1,000 times your entry. Download and play on the Underdog app, sign up with the code HTC, that's us, and receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash for our U.S. audience only. And a reminder before we get going, Heed the Call now has its own YouTube channel, youtube.com/@HeedTheCallPod. While you're here, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and drop a comment below. It's not that hard. We don't ask much. Okay, on with the show.
The Heed the Call podcast. Can't get enough of those crazy Kelsey boys.
Oh my goodness. Yes, more Kelsey brothers. Welcome to Heed the Call with Dan Hanzus and Marc Sessler. Oh boy, Monday Night Football recap. Sessdog, steer clear of Philadelphia. Do not go, forget about don't turn on the radio. Steer clear of the radio towers because the venom that could be emanating off of them is sure to present a danger. A very difficult game for fans of the Eagles tonight.
Yeah, WIP, not the station you need to be tuning to if you like sanity, if you like calm reactions to events. I find it funny because like we were texting about the ever-present nature of the Kelsey brothers, and Jason especially, they poured it on so heavily. And we may not feel the same way about him. I kind of dug him in the booth a little bit, but the thing I find that's hilarious is they kept him around for a really long time. And you know that like just with about like the waning moments of the fourth quarter, it was in tone that he was going to go down and get into a little bit of trouble and, crack open some brews and just celebrate an Eagles win because that's where it was heading. It seemed that way against a defunct Kirk Cousins and friends. You know how long it is to get from those press boxes in the elevator down to like wherever beer is downstairs.
Yeah.
I just wish I could have had a camera like on the Manning cam. Like I want to just see his reaction to the final 5 or 6 minutes of that contest, Dan.
You know what I want to see? I want to see the reaction of the ESPN producers in the truck and people back in Bristol because you're absolutely right, and it's a great call. There's 70,000 stunned, disappointed Eagles fans, and Jason Kelsey is disappointed because this was Jason Kelsey Appreciation Night. But yeah, like the idea that this was supposed to now just roll into the post-game show of just an Eagles block party, and the Falcons said no thanks because they win 22-21 in this game behind a stunning last-minute touchdown drive orchestrated by, of course, Kirk Cousins. And Mark, I will say, as someone who knows you very well, you're a man who finds calm in preparation. So I can only imagine the level of notes and the takes that you had locked and loaded. And all you needed to do was for Saquon Barkley to catch that pass in the flat to seal the game. And then the Eagles kneel on it 3 times. And Sessdog has his takes set up about Jalen Hurts and why it's time for Michael Penix and all this stuff. It all gets blown up in a big spot, Sessdog. And I know I know you so well, Mark, because I love you. You're like a brother to me. I could even sense in your texts the annoyance of all that hard work flushed.
Well, so there's different layers to that because a lot of that angst came from back in the day when we would have to write the recaps to the game, and they want them, 5 minutes after the game end. And I incorrectly would tend to create long graphs about what had happened and what it all meant. And then in a game like this, it gets completely nuclear bombed.
PTSD.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's in this world and what we do. I actually sat and really enjoyed it. I thought my thought was the Eagles and Jalen Hurts had awoken, like from that sleepy, sloppy Brazil game, that you kind of got this game from Jalen Hurts where early on it was like, where are we with this guy? But like his feet, it's like, my thought was like, here's the difference between two teams trying to find themselves with a quarterback who can damage you on the ground and one that is stuck in the pocket like someone stuck in quicksand, like in an old cartoon. But then it all got blown up, and that final drive was marvelous by Cousins. And it's kind of like we see that in football from like my earliest memories of football is like, why does this happen in the last like 62 seconds? Like, did Vic Fangio get taser gunned? Like, the whole defense falls asleep and everyone's open. Kirk Cousins is absolutely finding everyone open. And I'll let you describe some of that, but I texted to you basically like 4,000 storylines just died. And you wrote back, 4,000 new ones were just born. And that's what happens in a game like this. Everything we talk about tonight, tomorrow, all week until next Sunday gets absolutely altered. And I think that's one of the great things about these night games, these island games. And tonight is a great example of that. Yeah,
and just to kind of take you through quickly, so this is a game that goes into the half 7-6 in favor of the Eagles. The Falcons and Eagles then trade short field goals, so it's 10-9. And then late in the third quarter, you have a Bijan Robinson run to midfield, and then Kirk Cousins finally kind of awakes and is awakened, and he, with some pressure in his face, he hits a streaking Darnell Mooney for a 41-yard touchdown pass. 2-point conversion fails, 15-10. And then it was the Eagles, by anybody that's just watching the game and feeling the energy of the way these games typically go, taking control. And it's Jalen Hurts who really did, and that will be lost in this, also because he throws the game-ending interception to Jesse Bates. But he leads the Eagles in the fourth quarter on a 17-play, 70-yard drive that covers 9 minutes and 34 seconds. They get the 2-point conversion on a brilliant little last deke by Saquon, who gets stuffed going up at the goal line for the 2-point conversion, and then sticks his hand with the ball over the line as he's going down to make it 18-15. And then you get to the end of the fourth quarter after a brilliant Chauncey Gardner-Johnson stuff of Bijan at midfield. By the way, I'm not sold so far on this Zach Robinson scheme that Atlanta's running. It seems a little predictable and safe at times, at least before the last drive anyway. Everyone knew Bijan was going up the middle with that ball. So did C.J. Gardner-Johnson. Stuffs him, and now the Eagles just got to run out the clock. And on 3rd and short, they dial up a play where they have two options. The Falcons are out of timeouts. You can either run the ball and chew up another 40 seconds and then kick the field goal, or maybe even get the first down on the ground and ice it. Or you do what they did. They said, you know what, Saquon Barkley's our new superstar, and we're going to call pass play to him. And it would have worked, too, if he catches the ball. But that drop by Saquon Barkley, and Justin, we were talking about it off mic before we started. I have no problem with the call. I kind of love the call, to be honest with you, by the Eagles there, because that's why you have Saquon Barkley, and that's why Jalen Hurts is a guy that you pay all this money. One star putting the ball into the hands of the other star to put a game away, but they were betrayed by Barkley's hands in that spot, and it opened the door up for an absolute fiasco.
I disagree with you, Dan.
I know. I just said that we disagree. Okay. Remember?
Well, I had to set. I just wanted to. Okay. Before I just started talking,
here comes Robert Kennedy.
Hi.
No, I set the table. No need for pleasantries. We're digging straight in. It's Monday Night Football. It's primetime, Gravedigger. You're hot and you're on mic. Go.
So here's the thing. I am normally in favor of being aggressive in these situations. Like, I want you to always go for it on 4th down when it makes sense. I want you to do the thing that wins you the game. And we saw the Seahawks do this in week 1. They threw it on 3rd down, and Tyler Lockett makes the conversion. But in this situation, I just felt like the downside to not completing the pass versus the upside to completing the pass, like, yes, the upside to completing the pass is you win the game. So obviously tremendous upside. But the downside is you cannot run 40 more seconds off the clock. And the Falcons took over after that play with 1:39 remaining. If you run that extra 40 seconds off, that's 59 seconds remaining. The Falcons did not have any timeouts. They scored with 34 seconds left. You take the 40 seconds away that you could have bled the clock out, and that's negative 6 seconds that the Falcons, come on. So my main thing about this, though, isn't just that the risk was too great. It's also that you have been absolutely dominating on the ground the entire second half. You mentioned the drive that covered 9.5 minutes, the drive that we're talking about now that ended with this missed conversion was an 11-play drive. It only covered 29 yards, but they were just Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens. They were moving bodies in the run game. Saquon's popping off. It felt like he was running for 10 yards a clip every time he touched the ball. Obviously, he averaged 4.3 yards per carry, but the point is, you were dominant on the ground. you can still get the first down that way and win the game. If you don't get it, you run 40 more seconds off and kick the field goal. But if you don't catch the pass,
we get it. I
You
get what you're
lose.
saying, Justin. I get what you're saying, and there's absolutely that is a way to play it, and I don't disagree. But I also, and Mark, I'm curious where you come down on it. I think they fired up the right play, and just like Barkley, you say, oh, just run the ball. Well, Barkley could have fumbled as well. I mean, that could have happened as well with the ball in his hands. In this case, you trusted Barkley to get the job done, and he didn't. And I'll just say this, as Giants fans who suffered through week one, feeling a lot better watching this game, I imagine, Mark.
Well, for most of it, I mean, Barkley looks sensational on a string of plays, and he looks like he's going to be that way all year. On the play itself, I think this is just so results-driven because had he caught it and swept into the end zone or been tackled short of it and they run the game out, it's just not a conversation point. But here's where I agree with Justin. Like I text you guys, just get a first down somehow and end this thing. And I think it's circumstantial, and I like the idea of being aggressive, but the cost to it is they left a lot of time for a team that you don't believe is going to go down the field. That is how you factor some of these things in. Not that you just want to allow them that time, but there was very little evidence that Kirk Cousins was going to do what he did. And that's why it's like a spectacular end of the game. But they believed in what they were doing. They also believed in their defense. They believed in how they had played the entire night. And you're not going to give the ball 16 times to Bijan Robinson on that drive. We get that. But for Kirk to go do what he did is counter to everything that we've seen from him all season.
Let's split the baby here. How about this? Because
sure, whenever we can.
Yes, let's listen to and save it for the theology podcast, Mark. But let's listen to Nick Sirianni, who explained what happened on that 3rd and 3 and what the plan was.
What was your thought process on the 3rd and 3 call on the pass? And on that play, is there a mechanism where Jalen just sits down, takes a sack, if that's not wide open?
Yeah, definitely. We wanted to. They were running a certain defense and junking it up in the middle. So we're trying to go around the outside, and it didn't work.
Well, there you go. And so it's kind of like what we're both saying. Draw up a play, and if your superstar running back is open, hit him with the pass. If he's not, sit down and run clock. I guess then it becomes a bit of semantics. Is was Saquon Barkley wide open? I thought he was pretty open.
He was wide open. And
he was wide open.
That was a terrible drop. He catches that 7 out of 8 times. That was a terrible drop.
And now cycling, Mark, back to what you were beginning to talk about there. It's still, this is a game, other than a couple drives that Atlanta had, they were not moving the ball well for the most part. It wasn't that they didn't have it. Let me see what they did in terms of where they finished at in terms of yardage. They ran 58 plays, 385 yards, 9 drives, 6.6 yards per play. A lot of this is boosted obviously by the last possession. So they were okay. It wasn't, but they only had the ball for 24 minutes. Largely because of that crazy Eagles drive. But they take over after showing no signs of explosiveness for the entire game, and this is what happens. 1st and 10 at the Atlanta 30, Cousins to Pitts for 11, then Cousins to Mooney for 21, then Cousins to Mooney again for 26, and then Cousins to London for 5. Now we're down at the Philadelphia 7-yard line. Then an incomplete pass to McLeod that looked like pass interference to me, and also looked like Darnell Mooney was open underneath. So the Eagles defense is just in tatters at this point. And then finally Drake London cooks up Darius Slay with a great move and a bump out to the pylon and gets hit in stride from Cousins. PAT is good only after one of the dummy moves you've seen in a long time. You see Drake London right next to the referee mime shooting a semi-automatic weapon of some kind, which got him a 15-yard penalty, made the PAT 48 yards, and Young Waku is a damn good kicker, got it over the upright, not by a ton. I don't know if he even hit the net, but he did. But still, Mark, it's not over because you're still set up, and I fully expected Hurts, because he had played such a good game, to get them into field goal position, and they have a great kicker as well, of course. But what does he do after the 13-yard pickup gets them to the 43-yard line. They call timeout, and Hurts does that pass that we saw way too often last year when things are going down for that team. He targets Devontae Smith, who is not open, and Bates steps in front of it, no flags, and you could hear a pin drop in the link.
Yeah, I mean, look, here's the thing. Like, that interception by Jesse Bates, what a game he had, because he had an incredible breakup of Devontae Smith earlier on that was a would-be touchdown catch in the third quarter that forced a field goal. That mattered too. And if you go and look at where we were at halftime or deep into the third quarter, like Ray McLeod was the leading receiver for Atlanta, and Kirk Cousins had 70 yards passing at halftime. Both quarterbacks combined for like 145 yards. It was one of those games that's kind of a microcosm of what we've been dealing with through the first 2 weeks of the season, where passing games are just being shut down, and you just don't expect that final explosive march from them. And I don't think it's indicative of who they are. I don't. I think they can grow, and I watched Cousins, what he said after the game was that, and this is, I think with Kirk Cousins, who, like, he's got this night game thing hanging over him. I've never been a huge believer in that, but
he's won 4 or 5 in prime time now.
Well, that's the thing. So I think the thing is just some of it's the team around you and just life and him growing. But he did talk about how coming off the injury he's had and his age, like that final march, like, emboldens the team. And like Matthew Judon came up and like gave him a big hug. And I know that's just sports talk, but I do think it changes their season entirely. They go to Kansas City next week, and there's some belief now, like, we can do this, because before that drive, this was a plodding, run heavy, very good run blocking line. Like, they can do that, but like, can you imagine them getting out of a trap if they're in one next week? It's like, now you kind of wonder, like, are they going to get into sync here? And if you're the Eagles defense, you're thinking, what just happened to us? So a lot of stuff just changed in the last couple of minutes there.
Yeah, unbelievable. Joe Buck said after the game, in 31 years of calling football, he's never been done a game where things changed as quickly as they did. And I agree. That is a unbelievable turn of events. And just like I was talking about it on the Sunday night show, when you saw Burrow on the sideline celebrating what he thought was the game-winning pass breakup that then turned into the pass interference, things turn on such a dime. Everything's on the bleeding edge, and the Falcons go from a team where we're going to be asking a ton of questions about their direction going forward and what's going on with Kirk Cousins and why doesn't this offense move, but instead you're talking about how, wow, Cousins still has it. He went on that big drive and made the throws when it counted, and you're finding ways to win, and finally you have a real quarterback who knows how to because you're not getting, who's not doing that drive there? Desmond Ritter's not making that drive. Marcus Mariota is not making that drive. Late period Matt Ryan probably not making that drive. So if you're a Falcons fan, there's a lot to be happy about here. Winning on the road with the place ready to just go into a Jason Kelce celebration is a massive win for the Falcons. And next week, guys, they got the Chiefs in week 3. If they did not find a way to win this game, we're talking about a team whose season could be on the brink, come with high expectations. They have the Saints after that. The Saints all of a sudden are a team that people could fear. So, man, that's a huge win. Stunner.
It is a stunner. And you talk about things changing on a dime there. The Eagles are in the same boat. I mean, obviously, but the Eagles last season lost 3 games that they led in the last 2 minutes. They put this graphic up during the Monday night broadcast. They have now lost 1 out of 2 games in 2024 where they led in the last 2 minutes. So it's time of flat circle. And the crazy thing about it to me is I was ready to come on here and say, wow, that felt like a vintage Eagles second half performance.
Absolutely. Yes.
They were like sputtering a little bit in the first half, but then they just dominated you. They mixed in some awesome Jalen Hurts run calls where he finally did look explosive on some designed runs, which he hadn't really in the first 6-ish quarters of the season. He looked great scrambling last week against Green Bay, but the Eagles it felt like this is what the Eagles were in 2022 and the first half of 2023. And then Saquon Barkley drops a pass and it all goes down the drain.
That's sports, man. By the way, score another shot across the bow of win probability as like a metric that we should pay attention to. According to this land, 99.3% chance of an Eagles victory. So you're telling me that all it took was a Saquon Barkley drop, and then Kirk Cousins, who has thrown for like 1 million yards in his career and has done this for a long time at a high level against an Eagles defense that has not passed any tests yet. The 99.3%, I'm just not buying it, Cess Dog. Win probability, come at me. Win probability, Hive.
Yeah, I mean, that essentially turns Kirk Cousins into like a Jesus figure, if that's what the actual number is.
That's what I mean.
Yeah, it's like you're basically unfurling like Earth level miracles at that point. So maybe
Mark, can I give you the real number?
Yes.
You know what the real number is?
Yeah.
88.2.
Well, this is kind of like when we went down the road of softening some of these trade demands that we'd cook up in our segments. Let's start to learn that you're not going to get 3 first-round picks for, product X. And so
relax.
Maybe take a little, like this, it's not unlike with Justin's Titans predictions. Let's just take, for our services, a certain whole number off of the win probability. And we're probably closer to what makes us feel comfortable, and that's all that matters.
Anything else from this game, Mark, before we move to the news of the day?
I really want to see, because one of the comments that Kelsey one of the things he said that I thought was truthful in his world was that he'd spent a lot of time around the Eagles this offseason, and that he felt that what happened last year, the tornado of negativity, the darkness, had been cleared. But to Justin's point, like the pattern of how they were losing some of these games pops up very early in the season. We got Sirianni absolutely ballistic a number of times on the sideline. And while it's a new coaching world in Atlanta and they can feel good about what happened tonight, Atlanta or Philadelphia is right back in it. They're right back in it. And so how do you handle this? This was about as bad of a regular season loss as you could cook up in the first month of the season.
Okay. Let's take a break. Before we do, a little bit of housekeeping. As you may or may not know, we now have our own YouTube channel. So you could find us at youtube.com/@heedthecallpod. You get all our new episodes. Everything will be there. Even our older stuff eventually will migrate over there. And anything that is HTC related that's not on that YouTube page, you could find, of course, on our new Patreon. We have our draft every Friday. Mark and Jay Zumwalt have a brand new show rolling out, Rolling Thunder. Bob and I are doing the Throwback podcast, and then we have a taping coming up this week. So a lot of fun stuff there. Check it all out. All right, let's take a break, and when we get back, some news.
This episode of Heed the Call is brought to you by BetterHelp. What's something you love to learn? As an adult, do you make time to learn new things as often as you'd like, or was that lost in childhood? If you're searching for a way to reconnect with your sense of wonder, therapy might be the answer for you. Therapy can empower you to be the best version of yourself. It isn't just for those who've experienced major trauma. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/HTC today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/HTC. Another week, another insane underdog promo calendar. Check out what's on tap for week 3. Another CeeDee Lamb free pick drops on Tuesday. NFL and MLB discounts on Wednesday. Dan, you might have to check on those Yankees here. A profit boost token on Thursday. A mystery promo dropping in your app on Friday. And more NFL and college football discounts this weekend. Cancel your schedule, basically. So what are you waiting for? Download and play on the Underdog app, sign up with the code HTC, that is our show, and receive up to $1,000 in bonus cash for our U.S. audience only.
Mark, we've all been there, right? Running late, no time for breakfast, you're starving. Man.
Been there, done that, Dan.
Yeah, you got to race to meetings, practice, school pickups, whatever it is, dad life. But what if a delicious, nutritious meal could be ready in seconds? Support for Heed the Call is brought to you by Huel, the world's #1 complete nutrition brand with over 400 million meals sold worldwide. Yeah, you heard that right. 400 million. Huel is trusted by millions of people looking to fuel their days with convenient, complete nutrition. Try it for yourself with our exclusive offer for you, 15% off with the code HTC at Huel.com. That's HUEL.com. Fuel your best with Huel today. And Mark, I know you're not a big food guy, but here's something. This is a delicious complete meal with 27 vitamins and minerals and all the nutrients you need to thrive. Eating optional. Just hammer some Huel.
Yeah, and that's what I'll do with it. This makes food an option to me. It increases my desire to eat food, Dan. And also, I've tried it, and I like it.
And also, hammer some Huel. Maybe that should be the catchphrase. That's 15% off. The code HTC at HUEL.com. Unlock a healthier, easier way to eat with Huel. Nutritionally complete meals in minutes. Hammer that Huel. All right, welcome back. How you doing, Mark?
I am doing excellent. It is still the same night. We are still reporting and doing a show.
Absolutely.
That's a new drop. Thank you, Mark.
Yes. Before we sign off, let's get caught up with some news.
Bo, can you take us through the interception in the end zone?
Drop back, do it to the other team.
Oh no. Oh no. Oh no.
Wow.
Oh no. Oh no.
He's not wrong, though. You'd have to say that, the first thing I learned, in journalism was, if you don't know what to write, just write, a couple sentences that are absolutely factual. And what he said was factual. Let's start there. There could be more detail, more niche.
I hope, I'm not going to do the thing because I feel like that's baiting, old grumpy grizzled beat reporters be like, this kid doesn't get it. He needs accountability. But it's be careful, bud. They're if they pick up on that you're going to be, you don't want to be known as the person that can't, face the questions after a tough game. A little unsolicited advice. Maybe I could reach out to Bo Nix and just have that conversation with him.
Yeah, you probably have a direct channel to him. I'm sure that you could do that as soon as tomorrow.
I wish I had a direct channel to Bryce Young because that kid could use a hug. Marc Sessler. This news came down this afternoon, Monday, that Young, the number 1 overall pick, of course, in the 2023 NFL draft, suffered through a miserable rookie season on a Panthers team that did him no favors on multiple levels. Well, this season has started just as bad. 2 bad losses, 2 blowout losses for the Panthers in weeks 1 and 2. And then you heard the Pellraiser report that Bryce Young will not start against the Raiders in week 3. So he's benched, and it's Andy Dalton that will start, the veteran, the glowing ginger man himself. Crazy, Mark. Crazy because crazy that we've gotten to this point, right? But also understandable based on what we're seeing and the general vibes coming off Young at this point.
It's a pretty remarkable trajectory because there are a lot of people out there that studied quarterbacks very deeply and watched his amazing college career and had him as the number 1 guy. Height aside, I think always he'll overcome the height. We believe he can. He's not overcome anything, and I think that even what we've seen in these 2 games is more drastically concerning than last year, because last year the environment was understandably so troubling, and in comes Dave Canales, and it's all off season. We're going to do all we can for this guy and build him up as a quarterback. And Jordan Schultz reported that Young was shocked by this, that it wasn't this is one of the possible outcomes, that he learned as early as this morning, and he was shocked. And I think it speaks to the fact that and I won't go on forever here, there's a lot to look at, but this team specifically, and we've been tracking this Tepper-owned team for a while, and that when you talk to people years later that were inside a team that burns down the way that this one is, that the stories you hear are horror stories, organizational horror stories. And it's interesting to me that we're only 2 years removed from Tepper overseeing a Carolina Panthers team that went 0-2 to start the season. That team had Baker Mayfield, DJ Moore, and Christian McCaffrey. Matt Rule was fired 3 weeks later, and in comes Steve Wilkes. So for me, with this owner, this franchise, the fact that this happened, I am surprised. I find it not surprising based on his play, but just where we are this quickly with this team. And I feel like anything is possible within the next month. Anything. And that's why I wonder, Dan, if Dave Canales is I've got to go to Andy Dalton, not just for me, but for my assistant coaches. And I got to walk into that locker room, and they're mystified why this kid is playing when we've got Andy Dalton, who can kind of normalize. We can't even scout this team or this offense.
Yeah, let's listen to Dave Canales. He spoke to reporters and explained why he made the decision that he did.
A lot of factors that go into it, for this decision, and ultimately it just kind of lands on my shoulders to be able to make the best decision for our group, to give us our best chance to win this week. And we focus on the weeks, we focus on the challenge at hand, and we feel like Andy gives us our best chance to meet the challenge.
That's not what I thought Dave Canales would sound like. Let's also hear Canales, who's asked the question that needs to be asked, which is, you have a very hands-on owner in David Tepper. Is Tepper be benching?
I want to keep that private. What I would like to say, though, is this is something after I watched the film, I looked at it, had a thought, started working on, talking to the guys that we make decisions with. Certainly a lot of parties involved there. And ultimately this comes on me, and my number one responsibility is to help the Panthers win. And so this move, I believe, puts us in the best chance to do that this week.
I should make it clear, although God knows I wish it was true, that the reporter just didn't, take the mic and go, Tepper be benching. Like, I wish that's how this setup was for that, but it was more along the lines of, David Tepper is known to be involved and said he is involved in decisions. Was he involved with this decision? And notable the way he answered it, that he wants to keep that private. I think Tepper absolutely was involved,
Yeah.
Mark. I think it's very clear that that is a guy that has takes, and he needs to get those takes off, and it's probably the poor head coach that's getting hammered by them on Sunday after a long day at the office. And yeah, I agree with you. And if you read some of the reporting out there, Joe Person did some good digging on this, and some post-game quotes that came out from the 26-3 loss to the Chargers, a game in which Young threw for 84 yards on 26 pass attempts, which is just almost impossible to do. That the receivers are already like, yeah, we don't call the plays. We don't know why we're not being targeted downfield. It's just not happening. And Canales knows he's got a temperamental owner. He knew that before he took the job, but there's only 32 of these jobs, so he took it anyway. And he's got to save himself, because if he loses the locker room, that's how 2-15 one-and-dones are born. And Dalton is, if nothing else, a very solid backup, even at this stage of his career. A guy that, again, I've used this with Aaron Rodgers, like having an adult in the huddle and somebody that could stabilize things. I think Dalton will do that. Will it bring more wins to Carolina? I don't know. Will it make them more functional? Very likely, yes, because Young looks lost out there right now.
There was a play where Adam Thielen, they show him, streaking downfield. He's essentially wide open, and Young can't see him, can't find him. And, Thielen, who is, by all accounts, a good team player, kind of ripped his helmet off, and just, you could see the frustration. I think that's just, cycling through that locker room. And Andy Dalton, who really played some of his best football a couple years ago with the Saints in terms of being a real playmaker and a downfield passer, cool, give everyone a chance. And I'm sure Canales, who has spent 2 years in a row with remade quarterback projects, probably feels like, well, wait, I wanted to do more with this. And I don't think it's his I don't think he went home and watched just this tape and made this decision on Isolation Island. He made that pretty clear if you parse his words. We don't know, but he is trying to drop breadcrumbs. And breadcrumbs are also, look at what the owner's been over the last number of years. So this feels like a slight coup, and the coach has no power, and he's got to try to right the ship. And who knows where this will lead, because it's not, everyone's like, the one thing, and this is my final thing, everyone wants one of these 32 jobs. Well, okay, yes.
They do.
But they do, and they do because you believe in yourself and you want to go do it. But I think sometimes if you're a first-time picker of one of these jobs, you don't realize how toxic the situation might be till you get there.
I'm giving Canales credit, though, I guess is what I'm saying, is that
I am too.
He knew what he was getting into. These guys all talk, and he might even had people saying, hey, you might want to think about this, maybe go in a different direction. But at the same time, you just never know, because you could remain an OC, you could stay in Tampa, and that season goes sideways, and Baker goes downhill, and all of a sudden you're not the hot candidate anymore, and you spend the rest of your life wondering if you should have taken the job. All that stuff is out there. And I just want to say, I feel terribly for Bryce Young, because you could see it in his eyes. He threw one of the interceptions he threw They had a replay, and after he threw the pass, and it was a bad pass, you see one of his offensive linemen like jumping up, and like you could tell him the lineman's trying to react like, is there a play to be made here to stop the player who intercepted the pass? And Young's just like kind of frozen there, like he's like the play's over in his mind because he already blew it. And then we played the press conference also where he talked about his confidence was in God's hands or whatever, and it was just like. I wasn't sold. I don't think the Panthers were sold, and now they have to figure out what to do moving forward. Very, very tricky situation. For what it's worth, our buddy James Palmer reported that it was Dave Canales' decision, and James is a great reporter. So I'm not refuting in my mind that that's true, but it's hard to imagine that Tepper didn't make his voice at least very loudly heard. Put it that way. I mean,
right, because he did say, Canales himself said there were other voices. He could be, in his world, it's his decision. I don't doubt that at all, if that's how it was voiced to Bryce Young as well. I don't know. It's the Carolina Panthers. I'm willing to fantasize about other scenarios. That's just the way it works.
All right, so we'll continue to track that story, and coming up later this week with Connor Orr, we're going to dig in a little bit on the 0-2 teams and who might be in the most trouble and who has a chance to climb out of it. But I don't know. Like, what if Dalton plays well? What do you do? Like,
well,
Canales,
I don't think Bryce Young ever plays again potentially for the Panthers. So I think it's like you get out of the season and you find a quarterback.
You trade away, you mortgage the farm. Remember how much they gave up to get
Bryce
Young,
the last
and then you
regime,
give him one season and 2 starts, and then you bail. That's pretty unprecedented too. I think even
does he look
Jamarcus
so much
Russell
better
got
than,
a couple of years.
Does he look so much better than Josh Rosen looked? I mean, the thing is, they don't have the number 1 pick coming out of it, but they might.
Yeah,
not. They might.
Well, there's a very good chance that they actually do. There was also Kyler Murray waiting for the Cardinals. Is there a prospect at that level that would be waiting if this team knocked out another 2-15? We're going to see. All right. Before we get out of here, a couple 2-tree big injury updates. Let's start with the defending champion Kansas City Chiefs, who did not get out of that win over the Bengals clean because they're very talented, very important to what they do. Running back Isaiah Pacheco is expected to be out 6 to 8 weeks. He fractured his fibula, that's lower leg. Was that another hip drop tackle, or did he just cut underneath? Either way, it doesn't matter ultimately because Pacheco needs surgery and needs to get that corrected. So he's going to be out for several weeks. Kareem Hunt, former Chief, he's bounced around a little bit in the years since, now a free agent. He is visiting with the Chiefs tomorrow. This also, by the way, I don't know if we hit on this yesterday. No, we did not. Hollywood Brown is most likely out for the rest of the season. That chest sternum injury suffered on the first offensive snap of the preseason. Thanks a lot, preseason. Turned out to be an injury that did not heal as they had hoped. He has to have surgery, and now I think I was hearing mid-January at best it would be a return, and Adam Schefter reported his season is all but over. So those are 2 big hits for the Chiefs offense, and they're going to have to figure that out. Meanwhile, in Los Angeles, Cooper Kupp, the injury bug has grabbed him once again. His ankle injury is an injury that will lead to him missing extended time. He actually could land on injured reserve per Sean McVay. And this has just been, Mark, a dreadful, dreadful run of bad injury luck for the Rams, who have lost their entire offensive line. There was one remaining healthy starter, Jonah Jackson, who was playing through a shoulder issue, and now he needs to get that checked out and worked on. So he's potentially landing on IR as well. So it's wiped out. Injuries have wiped out the offensive line, took out Puka Nacua, and now Cooper Kupp is on the shelf for an extended period.
Yeah, it's a lot like, it's reminiscent of what happened to them in 2022, but that happened a little more gradually. This is like a more immediate waterfall of gore. It's been insane. Like every year it feels like there's one team that gets nicked like this, and nicked is a soft word to use. John Johnson is out. Their safety, Darius Williams, is still out. They do get a number of offensive linemen back. Like Alaric Jackson's back from suspension. Rob Havenstein is returned. Kevin Dotson. So it's not everyone, but it's just still the fact that I felt like Matthew Stafford struggled to function a week ago or on Sunday in that game, and he didn't look very healthy to me by the end. And it's like, you don't have healthy wide receivers. They've got some other wide receivers like DeMarcus Robinson and Tyler Johnson, who I like, but I don't like them as your 1 and 2. Like, they're really developmentally intriguing prospects behind your 1 and 2 star wide receivers.
Above the treetops tweet from Jordan Rodrigue, our friend, who will be back on the show on Thursday. The Rams are now without these starters for multiple weeks: Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, cornerback Darius Williams, left guard center Jonah Jackson, left guard center Steve Avila, backup swing tackle Joe Noteboom, and also safety John Johnson III, our buddy, who's a friend of the show. He is also now missing extended weeks. Also, right guard Kevin Dotson, he is available, but he's playing through a foot injury. These are the type of things that seasons are ruined. That's another 0-2 team, and another team we're going to talk about with Connor on Wednesday's show. All right, last injury update, Deebo Samuel. So here's the thing with the Niners. Didn't look so hot on offense in getting beat by the Vikings in week 2. Looked pretty great, especially running the football against the Jets in week 1, so it hasn't been at all bad. But Brandon Ayuk has been very slow to find his way into the mix after sitting out the entire summer in training camp with that contract dispute. So Deebo Samuel, very important to this offense, but he has a calf injury, and that's gonna cause him to miss multiple games, according to Kyle Shanahan. So now you take Samuel out of the mix. Still got George Kittle there. Jordan Mason has obviously done a great job so far filling in for CMC, but CMC is not coming back anytime soon. So maybe it's time, Mark, for Brandon Ayuk, who's now one of the highest paid wide receivers in the league, to start doing Brandon Ayuk things and help out his quarterback.
That would help. It's pretty incredible to see how slow of a start he's had. He was the number 3rd wideout in yards per route run a year ago when he looked like a bona fide star, goes into the offseason, wants more money, wants to do everything that leads to money except practice. He ranks right now as the number 100 receiver in yards per route at 1.1. That's pretty crazy. And while Jordan Mason has been a really good runner, he's only been targeted twice by Brock Purdy. And so it kind of just tells you that when Christian McCaffrey's not in there, it's your passing game, it's your run game, it's everything. And like, he's such an integral part of what they do and what made Brock Purdy a pretty fantastic player. But you take Ayuk out of the mix, and now you take Deebo. They were 0-3 in the 2+ games that Deebo missed a year ago. It kind of adds up to, they're playing the Rams this week. Justin reminded us before the show. That's sort of a like Spider-Man staring at Spider-Man type game. And I hate that meme, so I don't like even mentioning that. That's tired.
Yeah,
but I just did.
Also, I feel like the Rams are in their own category right now, honestly.
They are, but like win. They are, but you know.
The Rams would love to be the 49ers right now. Let's face it.
Most years.
Did I say Mason Jordan or Jordan Mason, by the way? This is a problem for me now. This has been popping up for about a week, and every time I say his name, I'm not sure if I said it the right way. I need a device, so I'm just going to think Jordan, number 1 basketball player of all time. So that number 1. Jordan, number 1.
Better than Anthony Mason. Although I liked Anthony Mason a lot. Football is completely different than basketball.
It's now been proven that it more or less is the same exact sport.
Do you know who I get that with? Device. I get that, and it's happened on the show. It was edited, thankfully. But James Conner, Cardinals running back, it is impossible for me to not just think he's John Connor, the character from Terminator.
Tuffy. Right, the leader of the resistance.
They're both such basic names, too. Right, yes. And you could argue whose job was more important. I think Arizona, the state, well, they were saved by John Connor, too. So it's sort of like you've got to think about the greater good there.
Unbelievable. And you find your way through because you're a pro, and a pro who's a bro. And, never forget that. Finally, before we sign off, a little media minute with the old Zuzzer, with the Cess Dog. Listen, I'm not going to tell you that I don't like Jason Kelce. Seems like a fun guy to be around. It's just a lot. It was a lot for me today. As somebody that is not invested, I'm not an Eagles fan, and I don't really have any connection to Jason Kelce beyond, he was a good center and an affable fellow, and he's Travis's brother, and they have a very successful podcast that generates many, many more millions. of dollars in income for them than our podcast does for us. It's not why I'm saying this. I'm not jealous of Jason Kelce. I'm just saying it was a lot of Jason Kelce. So what does Tugboat do? He's like, all right, Joe Buck and Troy are just salivating. Oh, coming up after the break, here he comes, Jason Kelce into the booth. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna jump out of ESPN 1 and go flip over to the Manning cast, which I hadn't done yet this season. And I was like, flip over. And now here we are introducing Eagles superfan and Top Gun actor Miles Teller. I don't need to hear from Miles Teller. What is going on over the Manning cast? No wonder the ratings are going in the toilet. We don't need to hear from Miles Teller in the third quarter of a very competitive football game. Miles Teller. The first question, Mark, was like, oh, well, you were, of course, in that, whatever, the drummer movie. You were in that drummer movie, and the teacher was very mean. And then it was just like this canned line where it was like, Eli was like, yeah, I can relate to that because Peyton's mean too. And I'm like, oh my God. And I had to go back to Jason Kelce.
Yeah,
well, he's fine.
The greatest thing was he followed Miles Teller. He followed Belichick, and there was like a hardcore, deep football conversation that I just switched on as my main broadcast. And it was like great watching Belichick just like kind of argue. He argues with Peyton, specifically Peyton. Manning, Eli doesn't seem to get the. It's wonderful. Like they're kind of trying to call plays and what's kind of but then Miles Teller come on. I just muted it and I went over to so I didn't catch in detail as you did. But
I got no issues with Miles Teller as a person, and he did a nice job in Gun too.
I
Maverick.
thought so. Yeah. Yep.
But let's just calm down a little bit with it. And by the way, Justin, you just put that up. There was some pregame video of Jason Kelce in a green velour sweatsuit dancing on stage. If you go and search it out on the internet. At one point, there's, I guess, a famous Eagles fan that has a huge, big old belly, and then he has a tattoo on his stomach. He's like a well-known guy. And Kelce implores him to do they run into each other and do a jumping, chest bump. And the guy, the Eagles super fan, after they do the chest bump, probably several beers deep, and Kelce's amped up, obviously, very clearly blows out his knee as he lands on stage in front of hundreds of people. And Jason Kelce's just he has no idea it happened. And this guy's life just was like, oh, now I got 11 straight months of physical therapy 3 days a week. Awesome. Glad I did this. Tough night in Philly, man. Tough night.
Oh, man.
What are they
Collateral
doing?
Damage.
What's Jason Kelce doing tonight? He's probably still partying, though. He's having a good time.
I think if you're him, you plan to get sort of semi-drunk because he was talking about, he was reconnecting with the wife and going to probably float home and try to beat traffic. I don't know. He was playing it. But then that happened. I would imagine, quite a few drinks in at this point and seeing colors we've never seen.
Joe Buck, this is a quote I wrote down. Okay, so it's obviously on my radar. How beautiful would it be if we were to see a tush push play while standing next to Jason Kelce? I don't know. Beautiful? I don't know. Guess
it
kind of beautiful. I mean,
it happened.
Is it? Am I getting choked up because Jason Kelce's in the booth because they're doing a 1 yard tush push?
You are not. I can guarantee that.
I do have one more Joe Buck quote at the end of it.
Yep.
An honor to cover you and get to do this game with you. It's like, okay, all right. Did Jason Kelce, did I miss something? Did he save the president of the United States and foil a terrorist plot? Was he was he actually what was it, White House Down or whatever? Was he actually, it was a true story and he was the figure played by Channing Tatum? I'm probably mixing up 7 action movies now, but
you know what I think will happen? I think that will occur. I think with the timeline with the Kelces is that they've got to keep kind of flip-flopping who's in the limelight, and he will save a presidential figure. Yes.
All right, that's enough.
Is this podcast over yet?
It's almost over. A guy, Mark in Philly, nice job. I did tweet about the Kelce Miles Teller thing. And then he replied, "You've worked yourself into a shoot with this Eagles hatred bit." I was like, "Yeah, that's
true.
That's fair." I don't hate the Eagles. All right, let's wrap this up. Anything else? Oh yeah. So, in addition to our show, by the way, check out. We're on the new feed. youtube.com/@heedthecallpod. That's where you find us on YouTube. But on our old landing spot, you can find 89 with James Palmer and Steve Smith. That's their channel now. Also, there you can find Clean Pocket with Colt McCoy and Jay Gruden, Coach, AQ Shipley, and Justin Pugh, all guys that are doing the damn thing. And check out those shows. And I think that covers everything, Mark.
I'll say one quick thing about Pugh. He's doing this thing where he's going from stadium to stadium each
he's
week
doing
to
a nice
decide
job with that.
the greatest fan base. And he's the kind of perfect person because he'll stand amongst like the giant crowd outside that's drunken and lathered up, and he's like 6'7", so it's like he's not gonna. No one's touching him. He's a good person to kind of run the show.
You know what it's like? It's the everyone's stock pushing all the chips to the middle of the table, and Jason Kelsey. Let's go with Pugh. That's our guy.
Pew guy. We're Pew
Pew
people.
guys.
Yeah, Pew guys.
All right. Till we're not puke guys. That's the center of the Green Bay Packers. We just got to get that right. All right. Till Wednesday, heed the call.